Hello everyone again. Thank you so much for all of you subscribers, you followers, everyone that has shared videos. What we don't understand is when we share, we are saying that we care about the next person enough to give them the knowledge to be set free. And so that is just such a major thing to me. Let's be free together. Anybody could be bound together, but no, let's be free together, okay? But so today, for those of you who haven't heard much of my testimony, today I'll kind of give you a brief rundown, like a quick timeline, so to speak. As a child, I was raised up in the church, so they call them kingdom kids, I think, or preacher's kids, whichever one you'd like to call it in this video. My dad was a minister, and our whole little baby lives, we were being abused. And we're not talking about the regular abuse, you know, the anger that came with that abuse. We felt it. And my mom, of course, minister's wife, and she did the best she could, you know, but eventually, because of the abuse, we was put in foster care. As time progressed, my mother got us all back, and we were still being abused. At around 12 or 13 years old, I began to see things that I had never saw before. My mother and my father had 4 children together. They had been together since Job Corps. They had been together for a very long time. So with that being said, they had a history, and we knew the history. So as time progressed, my father would go to church, preach the best sermons, y'all. He was so anointed. He was so anointed. And for a long time, I had a problem with God regarding it. Because how could someone so evil in my book at the time be so anointed by God? He was cheating on my mom. And every night, I just was so sensitive to my mom that I would hear the door slam every night after they was arguing. And while every other kid is just knocked out, I'm just up. And I'm just crying, not even knowing what divorce was, not knowing anything, you know? And I would go in the room with my mom and soak up her tears with my body. And she just held me close and just cried on me. And she still had to step up and be a mom, right? Your duties don't stop because you're hurting. Thank you. Your duties doesn't stop because you're hurting, right? And so she would still go to work faithfully and try to provide for all of us. As my dad lived the best life, you know, being a womanizer. And he ended up being told that he couldn't preach anymore at the current church because they found out about it. And I'm grateful, you know, for them, you know, finally doing it. They split. Ended up getting a divorce. I ended up going into anger, you know. One day, I used to braid hair for my mom, because when you soak up that many tears, you try to help out the best way that you can. And so I would go braid hair to make a little living. And, you know, at that time I was young, so I couldn't make much. But I did make something, you know, and I would take it to my mom and give it to her. And she would be like, "Where did you get this money? Where did you get it?" And she used to just she used to verbally abuse me because she thought that I was out there selling my body or whatever it else may have been. And I would just cry, and she didn't know that I was a virgin. She had no clue. But my goal was to meet a need that I seen. If I seen a need, I would try to meet it. And I'm this way to this day, right? But so as mom is working a lot and trying to figure it out for us, she kind of checked out a little bit. And I couldn't blame her because I had checked out a little bit. I began trying to help around the house, do all the things that I could to be helpful. And then eventually the verbal abuse started getting to me. And even though they wasn't together, my mom would call them back to abuse us, whenever we did anything wrong. And finally one day I just got tired and I ran away. After that I just became like a problem child. I had fought a teacher in Paseo and ended up on the news. God had mercy and showed favor. I ended up getting out of that situation, but I still lost 180 days of the next semester. So of course, with no schooling, time, I had it all. I had time to just get in trouble. And one day I got into a fight and led me right on into juvenile detention center. But if I can back up a little bit, I was a wrench undone. I was broken, you guys. Like, I hadn't even experienced the adult brokenness that I have been able to experience as an adult, right? This was child brokenness. And so I still have flashbacks of when we used to get under the pew and lay down because we were swollen on our butts because we had been abused right before coming into the house of God. And we would just sleep until the pain went away. And for so long, it was like people didn't care to see it, or they just didn't see it. But it left a hole in my heart, you guys. As I was in foster care, I was molested multiple times. And I blamed all of it on my dad. The way my mom treated me. While molested in foster care, the girl used to always tell me, if you tell, you'll never see your family again. So I never said anything. I just endured because I've always had to be the strong one. And then after that, molestation became normal. It was like, after so many people do it to you, you just begin to think it's right. And so I hated him. Like, I had a strong hate towards that man. He had me so fearful that I couldn't even look at him until I was about 16 years old, you guys. And I wouldn't even say 16 because I was locked up until I was almost 17. Almost 17 years old. I couldn't look my dad in his eyes because I was scared that he would hurt me. There's someone out there that has experienced the same hurt. You survived, but every day you're dying. Every day your harboring that every day. You're wondering how it could be different, contemplating how you could have changed it. Every day, you're being tortured by your past. But one day, I just had to tell him how I felt. I had to release that. And I'm telling you, I released it in such a way that he was ready to kill me. Some of you are still living there. Some of you are still tormented by the past hurt that you've experienced, unable to rise above it, unable to see the light in the dark tunnel, unable to love because one man that was supposed to love you neglected you of it, snatched it, and refused to give it back. And for so long, because of that, I couldn't be in a good relationship. Abuse was natural. So if he wasn't abusing me, I was abusing him. I fought my way through life. Being incarcerated multiple times, I began to turn towards drugs and alcohol to suppress the torture that was happening in my mind and in my spirit. And the more and more I did, the more and more my patterns began to reveal themselves to me. And I realized that I was allowing him to take all of me. Every last part of me. I was allowing him to take my childhood, my preteens, my teenager years, and I almost allowed him to take my entire adulthood. But it had to stop. It had to stop. And so I told him how I felt. And my mom was there, and I just started screaming at him. And I just let loose, you guys. I let loose. Now, granted, this is a big thing for someone who still can barely look him in the eyes because fear was so heavy towards him. And I just released it. And when I released it, I just started screaming at him. And he was like, "You don't talk to me like that. I am still your father." And my mom was like, "No, Howard, just listen." And the moment that he listened, I felt a piece of that weight lift. I felt a piece of that unforgiveness be put in a balloon that has helium in it and lifted to the sky as if I was taking back my freedom. I had been bound, right? Somebody's bound by what has happened to them. Now, it didn't go away all in that moment. The more and more I talked about it, the more and more I released it, the more and more I cried about it, but also stepped up and did something about it, I began to forgive him. I began to listen to his perspective. What was you thinking? Why did we have to be the recipient of your pain? And as he began to tell me, it was like I began to think about how forgiving God is. and how merciful he is. And how the same way I wouldn't want somebody to hold my sins over my head is the same way that I should have let him be free. I took a turn for the worse for a long time. I turned to everything but God. And it's crazy because I knew who God was. And I knew where to go back to. But because I had a hate for my father and a hate for God, because I felt like God allowed it to go on, and my dad was just gonna keep on hurting me in my eyes until he broke me to my weakest point. I forgave myself. I know it sounds crazy. I forgave myself because I wasn't able to protect myself against sexual abuses, against physical abuses, against neglect, against abandonment. I couldn't do anything. I was holding that as if it was my fault, as if I could have did something better to change it. But I'm here to tell you today, you did all that you could and more. You survived. That which was meant to break you, it built you. That which was meant to tear me down, it built me. And now I can look at my father because of God. Because of the grace and the mercy that he showed me. And love him. You guys, I love my father. His mother, gone. His father, nowhere to be found. He has one sibling that I know, that I barely know. And I begin to empathize with him. How do you know that you have forgiven when you can empathize with someone that has broken you down to your lowest? I empathize with him. When you can empathize with somebody that hurt you, you are now showing them that you have rose above all of that hurt, all of that abandonment, all of that neglect, all of that abuse, to a place that some people never, ever, ever see. They get consumed by their hurt. If you are self-inflicting pain upon yourself, if you are unable to get in a relationship that is going to be a blessing to your life, a blessing to your children's lives, if you are unable to get out of that abusive relationship because all you know is abuse, if you are unable to see past that pain, it's time. It is time for you to heal. It is time for you to start laying some stuff down, talking about it. Release it. That is people's biggest flaws. They do not release it. When you do not release it, it sits there like a stomach bug. It sits there like a demon on your shoulder. And what you do is you internalize it. You just keep replaying and replaying and replaying every time something reminds you of it. And then we wonder, why are we sitting in this dark room? Why are we sitting here self-inflicting pains, cutting ourselves, doing everything in our ability to mess up our bodies because someone else messed it up first? That all or nothing thinking, it gotta go, right? It has to leave. Well, if somebody messed it up a portion of the way, I might as well mess it up the rest of the way. Absolutely not. You don't get to do that to yourself. Spoken from a testimony, spoken from a person that loves you enough to say, rise up, get up, find yourself in the midst of all of that cloud, in the midst of all of that darkness. Find yourself. And if you can't find yourself, which some things, most things, only God can do. Only God can assist you in that process. He knows you're harboring that bitterness. He knows you got that unforgiveness there. He knows that you have resentment. He knows it. And let me tell you something, because I've been through it. You could tell when somebody's resenting. You could tell when somebody's bitter. You could tell when somebody is bound by their hurt. But you don't have to be. And one thing that we will find out about this channel is that the only thing we will speak is encouragement. Yeah, there'll be some times where we speak the truth. But even in the truth, there is encouragement to be had. No matter where you've been in life, no matter what you saw in life, no matter what you've went through, you have the ability to rise above it. And when you rise, there'll be a whole bunch of people waiting for you. There will be a whole bunch of people ready to embrace you and say, I know you've been neglected, but you're safe now. In all things, seek after God. In Jesus' name.